Okay, now we're going to teach you how to solve cube roots. First example, solve the cube root of 27. Okay, now you might already know that 3 times 3 times 3 is 27. So in this, all you have to do is like square roots, except you have to find what 3 numbers can be multiplied to get 27. So the answer would be 3, since 3 times 3 times 3 is 27. Now let's try another example. Solve the cube root of negative 216. Now this is the rule. Whenever there's a negative sign in the radical, make sure that your answer is negative. Okay, so now that you know that, you have to just find out what 3 numbers can be multiplied together to get 216. Well, you might already know that the answer is 6. So 6 times 6 times 6 is 216. That gives us an answer of negative 6. Now let's estimate cube roots. We're going to teach you how to estimate with the first example of estimate the cube root of 57. Step 1. Whenever you're estimating cube roots, make sure to draw a number line with the 2 closest perfect squares. So, when you draw the number line, you need to have the 2 closest perfect squares with them. In this case, it's cube root of 57. So you have to find which 2 perfect squares would be the one above it and the one below it. The closest is 64 on top, and the closest is 27 on the bottom. So that's how you draw a number line to put all your estimated values. Okay, this is the number line. So as we mentioned, the cube root of 27 and the cube root of 64 are placed on the number line, which are the 2 closest perfect squares. The cube root of 27 is 3, and the cube root of 64 is 4. Now, based on this step 2, which is to adjust the estimates by cubing the numbers to get the closest to 57. In this step means that we have to see that the cube root of 57 for this example is closer to 4 than 3. So when we adjust, we know that we should estimate to the higher range of 3 to 4, not to the lower end of it. So that would be to maybe start off with 3.7 or 3.8 instead of 3.1 or 3.2. So in this example, it's 57, but you might have other examples to find the cube root of. Okay, so like we said, we have to estimate. Make sure that you have your calculator during this process because it will be needed to estimate. So at first, let's start 3.7, which is closer to 4 than 3. So 3.7 cubed is 50.653. Using your calculator, 3.8 cubed is 54.872. Now, we need to reach to 57, so maybe we can go one more. Let's try 3.9. 3.9 cubed is 59.319. Now that we've done all this work, now that brings us to step 3. Step 3 is to check to see which estimate is closest to 57. Now that you check with your calculator, you know that 50.653 is much further away to 57 than the other 2. So then we use our calculator to subtract each number from 57 to find the difference. After you do that, you can tell that 3.8 cubed is closer to 57 than 3.9 cubed. That brings us to our answer, which is 3.8. Okay, let's try another example. Estimate the cube root of 79. Okay, now based on what you've learned, the first step is to find the 2 closest perfect squares. The cube root of 64 is 4, which is one of the closer ones, and the cube root of 125 is 5, which is the other one that is above it. And cube root of 79 on the number line will be placed between 4 and 5, but closer towards 4. So we have to adjust it using the step 2 with a lower number, which is closer to 4. So let's try 4.2. 4.2 cubed is 74.088. 4.3 cubed is 79.507. We need to get to 79, and that is really close to it. It's only 0.507 off. So the answer to the question is the cube root of 79 equals to approximately 4.3, since we have used our steps. Okay, so now that you have seen all this and learned all of the examples, let's try an independent example. Find the cube root of negative 343. Now, you might already know that 7 times 7 times 7 is 343. And whenever there's a radical negative sign in the radical, you need to make sure that your answer is negative. So that gives you negative 7. In order to master these kind of questions, just remember one trick. Whenever there's a negative sign in the radical, make sure that your answer is negative. It will never be a positive answer without the negative sign. Okay, so now let's try some independent examples. The first question is, estimate the cube root of 155. Okay, so make sure to pause the video and take your time to answer it, and you are allowed to use a calculator. So I hope you get it right. Okay, time for the answer. The correct answer is, the nearest 10 estimates to 5.4. If you got it correct, then that means you have mastered the topic of estimating cube roots. Okay, next question. Which is the closest estimate to the cube root of 87? A, 4.2, B, 4.3, C, 4.4, or D, 4.5? Okay, so make sure you pause the video and answer the question with a calculator. Okay, time for the answer. The answer is C, 4.4. If you use a calculator, the real answer is 4.43, which is then estimated to 4.4. You were allowed to use a calculator, so good job.